Hello and welcome to Always Take Notes. Now, in a breach with tradition, we're actually recording this introduction in advance of doing the interview because I have to travel tonight for a story. But on Friday, Kassia is going to be speaking to Joelle Owusu, who's an editor at Unbound, the publishing house in London that is shaking up traditional publishing in a kind of digital, crowdsourced, very trendy way, which we will find more about in due course.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conversation, actually. I have actually sponsored one book by Unbound before, but I look forward to learning more about their methods, why they've decided to break with tradition, and how they've found it going up against a very established publishing industry with a completely new and untried method. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
We hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks.
We are here in the offices of Unbound in North London, and I am here with Joelle Owusu. Is that how you say your name?
Yeah.
Thank goodness. People always get my name wrong.
Right.
So I feel a pressure to get other people's names right.
Okay.
You are a commissioning editor at Unbound, a lapsed geologist,
Yes.
and a writer from South London.
Yes.
And also the author, I'm not sure if you would call, I guess it is an author of Otherness, which is your unedited diary, which you very bravely unleashed on the world late last year, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a little while. But I was wondering if you could start off looking at your career thus far and how you took the leap from geology to publishing.
Sure. So my dream as a child was to be a geologist. From the age of 7, it was rocks, it was fossils, it was dinosaurs, precious stones and all that stuff. And I made the decision at 7 that I will be a geologist. I will. And although there were twists and turns along the way, GCSEs and A-levels, I actually, did go to university to do geology. But it was there in my final year. Actually, I think it was third year, actually. I did a 4-year course. I realised that I don't think this is for me anymore.
What rock was it?
Which rock? Oh, yeah, it was a piece of nice... it was more of the environment. It wasn't very... I mean, it doesn't have to be female friendly, but the women and girls on my course, I did notice that a lot, dropped out, and it was quite a hostile environment, even as a student, to enter the geology, especially petroleum industry. And I just had to fight every single day to kind of prove myself on this course. And I was the only one kind of speaking up about it, to be honest. I realised there was a problem, but there was nothing I could do about it that much. And then it got to 4th year, and it came to, oh God, what am I going to do after? Because most people just go straight into a master's, and then onto a PhD, and then, maybe try and find a job in oil or hydrology or something like that. And I just looked at myself, I thought, I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't think I have the money for a master's. I already have, the $9,000 a year loan to pay back. I just needed a job, I needed money. And also, I just didn't think geology was for me anymore. I loved it as a passion when I was younger, when I was doing it on my own terms. But because I was kind of, our course changed and I was kind of pushed into the petroleum side, I realised that it just wasn't for me at all. And so it was that moment at the end of 3rd year where I made the decision to carry on, 4th year graduate, but that year, 4th year, really think about what I really, really, really want to do. And I'd always had an interest in books and writing, and I loved to read. I was a massive, massive bookworm, still am. So I just took the leap to try and see if I could get into the publishing industry. And I knew it would be very, very hard because I'd had no experience. I didn't even do English for A-level or anything like that. So I knew it would be really, really difficult. But I just had to make that leap before I was pushed into a career that I didn't want to do.
I'm amazed that that facing the crunch of loans and needing money, that publishing was the industry that called to you.
Goodness me.
But I'm also really intrigued by how you ended up making that leap. Did you start doing internships? now there are a lot more paid internships, but I went through the unpaid internship, and I'm sure you did as well. How did you manage it? And did you know which area of publishing you really wanted to be in, or was this sort of a journey of discovery?
It was a total journey of discovery, to be honest, because I didn't know much about the publishing industry. So I was kind of going into it quite naively, being like, I want to work in publishing. And then it was only when I had to actually sit down and ask myself which area. I didn't have a clue, to be honest. All I knew is that I loved reading and I loved writing, and that was it. And obviously that's not really enough. That's not really good enough. You do need to know. So I did a lot of research. I did a lot of LinkedIn stalking, basically. I found, because I had Twitter, and I found editors that I loved online, different publishers, and I just stalked every single one of them. I didn't even realise that people could see that I'd searched their names in LinkedIn, which was really embarrassing, actually. And I just kind of looked at where they came from, and what they did for A-levels, where they went to uni, what they studied, the internships that they did, to see if I can kind of do the same. And I just realised that I just didn't have the experience. I didn't even have a network or anything. So it was a real challenge, and so I went down the internship route. So this is all after I graduated, and I was poor. I was back in London. Well, I was back in Surrey with my parents, and I was panicking at this point. And I couldn't find an internship. They all wanted experience, and by experience they meant at least graduated with some kind of creative degree, and I didn't have a creative degree at all. So I was just very upset about that. I just knew that or maybe I should just give up on this whole publishing dream. And then I actually discovered Creative Access, which is a charity that provides internships and creative opportunities to BAME, so Black and Asian and mixed ethnicity people. And even then, I applied for so many internships, and these are all paid internships, by the way. But I realised that I still didn't have the experience, and it was just stress. But then I found one for Unbound, and that was for publicity and editorial. And I thought, oh, this would be good, actually, because I don't know which department I want to go into. I had publicity background because I was a blogger, and I was always going on press trips, and I was always publicising something and reviewing things like that, promoting things. So I thought, okay, I can go with that, but also the editorial side.
You get some exposure to it.
Get some exposure to that as well. So I thought that was perfect. But that was the last internship I'd applied to, because I had been rejected from every single one, and I'd applied for. I think by the time I applied for the Unbound one, I'd applied for about 20, and just getting rejection letter rejection email after rejection email straight away. There wasn't even like maybe like a week gap. It was just almost instant. I was just really discouraged. So I said, do you know what? If this Unbound one, if I don't even get a first round interview, then maybe this isn't for me. And because I'd given up by that point, I was just desperate, just to see if I could, just find a way, just as an intern, just find a way into the industry. But there did come a point where I was thinking, okay, maybe I should just go back to geology then, because clearly it's not written in the stars that I should do this.
If it makes you feel any better, I did do a creative degree, and I also applied for about 20 different internships, and I kept a little log of who I was applying to, and who I'd emailed already or written letters to. I was writing handwritten letters as well. Wow. And I didn't even get rejection letters from most of them, and I only got accepted for one unpaid internship. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to actually get on with Unbound. I had to do about 2 interviews, and I'm very, very fortunate that it was paid. So I've never actually had an unpaid internship, and that was pure luck, to be honest.
Long may that continue. Yeah. Can you explain a little bit about Unbound, what it does, and how that differs from traditional publishing? I mean, presumably when you got into it, you were just like, I don't even care. But now
I did. Oh, I definitely did.
But now that you're kind of embedded and you've been working here a little while, can you explain and talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so Unbound is the world's first crowdfunding publisher. So what that means is that the authors, they create a little video, and then they actually ask people to support their book through pledging for it, so pre-orders. And they need to reach a certain target in order for the book to go ahead, basically. So they raise all the funds needed to create the book. and that is completely different from traditional publishers. It's quite a transparent process. It's quite what's the word? It's quite they're kind of exposing themselves. They're really putting themselves out there. But we've realised that it works because the books that are on our site you will not find anywhere else. Do you know what I mean? These are real people are really, really passionate about their projects, and that's why they come to us, because there is more risk in that way. But I think a lot of traditional publishers, they just look at ours and look at the projects on our site and think they're quite niche. We do have really, really niche, still really interesting, really well written, but sometimes they don't want to take a risk on these kinds of books. But we believe that these books need to exist, basically. So this isn't like a last resort kind of way of publishing. It's not for everyone, but it's just a really interesting way of publishing. You already have, you need about 300 ish people usually, and what that does means that once you've actually written the book, there is like a buzz around it already. You know that there's people out there who like the idea and have supported it.
Do people have to pledge a certain amount, or can they give what they want?
We do have, so on every page, on the right hand side, there are a list of different reward levels. So the minimum is around £10 for our digital, and then it kind of goes up and up and up, and you can even do like a patron level, which is usually in the thousands, where you get certain rewards. But yeah, you can choose which one you want. You can get just a hardback if you want, or you can get a signed hardback, or you can have dinner with the author, or quite quirky levels. And I think it's just a nice way of kind of getting rid of the middleman, really, and just putting you with the author, the reader and the author, just kind of putting them together. And I think it's just a really interesting way of publishing.
And does the amount that a book requires, is that sort of set depending on the book? Because obviously if you have an anthology, it would be different to one person, say, writing a novel. Presumably there's more people involved, it's a more collaborative project, and there are more people, bluntly, to pay. So how is that determined?
So, you're right, it is completely different, and the targets needed are usually quite different. So with a novel, we'll just look at the word count, we'll look at the binding, paperback or hardback, put in all these other costs like printing and all that stuff, and then come up with a specific figure. With anthologies, we do have to look at how many contributors there are, how much they're all being paid, because that has to be crowdfunded as well. So anthologies do end up being quite a lot higher than just a single novel, because we have a lot of fees that we just need to deal with. So it is different depending on the genre, to be honest. If we were doing a big cookbook, or if we were doing a photography book, because the pictures, there'll be images, and because they'll mainly be in colour, and the size of the book, it will probably be a big bespoke sized hardback, and that will probably be a bit more costly than, say, a poetry anthology.
And so is it harder for people to go through, if they're creating an anthology, is it harder for them to do that with you than it would be with a traditional publisher? Because presumably they need more backers who are willing to open their wallets more.
I don't know. I have found that some editors find it a lot easier to do it this way, but some have found it challenging. It kind of depends on the editor. But because this is such a new way of publishing, everyone's learning, basically. How do I answer that, actually? I think it is different. I think mainly because it's just our projects are out there, and so everyone can see what percentage everyone's at, and you can even have a look at how many people have pledged, and even like the names of people whose names will also go in the back of the book if they wish. So I think sometimes it looks like there is more pressure to succeed with Unbound because it's just out there. But if you were with a traditional publisher, all of this happens behind some kind of veil, and then suddenly a book is produced, so people only know about it once it's been published or once it's in the proof stages. But with Unbound, everyone knows about the project from the get-go, so that can be quite daunting, but usually it works out pretty well, because if you are passionate about it, and if you have got a campaign together, and it could be a lot easier, a lot smoother, but it really does depend on the editor. But it's worked out quite well so far.
Can you talk a little bit about how old the company is, its history, and why it was set up originally?
Yeah, sure. So Unbound has been going for 6 years now, and it was set up by 3 writers who wanted to put, I mean, the old motto was putting books in readers' hands, basically. Books are now in your hands, because they realised that they just wanted to get rid of the middleman and put authors and readers, bring them closer together, basically. And they realised that certain books weren't being published because they deemed too niche and too risky by traditional publishers. And so by setting up Unbound and letting the reader decide which books get published, basically, not us, we just kind of we pick a great idea, basically, but it is the readers who choose which books get published. I think they thought that it would be a really interesting idea, and it's not actually a new idea. Apparently this is how, you know, the Romans did it back in the day and stuff like that. So we came onto the scene, people were like, oh, it's so fresh, it's so new, it's so original, it's so innovative, and it is, I guess, but it's actually what traditional publishing was thousands of years ago, basically.
Can you talk about some of the notable successes that Unbound has had? You know, the really big, starry publications, and how and why they've worked so well at Unbound, while they might not have been picked up by more traditional publishers.
Sure. Well, I think the most recent success, which was published last year, was The Good Immigrant, which was edited by Nikesh Shukla, and
he's actually another one of our guests.
Oh, is he?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, well, hi Nikesh. If you ever listens to this, yeah. So that worked out pretty well. He came up with this idea with one of the other contributors in the book. About creating an anthology about the experiences of what it's like as a person of colour in the UK. And that hadn't been done before. It had been done in the US. Everyone already had that kind of about racism, you know, that kind of stuff, discrimination. Everyone kind of knew that it was a US thing, you know, but it's never really talked about in the UK. And there is this thing that you have to be like the model immigrant. You have to do things a certain way. And so, yeah, he put that together. He worked with Rachel, who's our editor at large, and that just did exceptionally well, to be honest. I think it raised all its money. I think it hit 100% in 3 days, which was a record for us. And even J.K. Rowling got a wind of it, and she put in some money and supported it. And it kind of seemed like an overnight success, but obviously Nikesh has been working hard and getting the idea together. And it was just great to see. I wasn't working at Unbound at the time, but even I knew about it all the way up in Aberdeen, you know, being miserable in my geology
looking at rocks.
I just remember hearing about it on Twitter and thinking, oh my goodness, there's actually going to be a book about British, Black and Asian people, a collection of essays. And I couldn't believe it because everything I'd read, especially essays and anthologies, they were all about American people. And there is this thing in this country where no one wants to believe that things like racism and discrimination and all that stuff, people don't want to believe it exists, basically.
I think it was also particularly, I don't know whether you call it a good moment or a bad moment for it. You know, 2016, it became a lot harder to ignore. These things were a lot more open and talked about, and it seems like this really captured a moment when people were willing to see the things that had always been there.
Yeah, I mean, when I say we, I mean like people of colour, we've been sharing our experiences for years, but now people actually decided to listen, basically. Because I think a lot of people, especially when Trump came into power, people were seeing a lot more, and, you know, people filming incidences on their phones and stuff. Suddenly people were like, oh my goodness, racism is alive. I can't believe this is happening in 2016. I can't believe this is happening in 2017. It's like, we've been telling you this. It's only now that you're actually seeing it for yourself. So that was interesting. But yeah, that did really, really well. It was Radio 4's Book of the Week last October, and it was nominated for various awards, and we were just really, really proud of it. And even coming to work at Unbound, that was the standout book for me, even though it was only in its proof stages. I was just so excited, and I knew I just had to be part of this company that, you know, that was publishing a book like this, to be honest. I don't think Nikesh went anywhere else with his idea.
Okay, that's interesting. So he always wanted to come to Unbound.
I think so. I don't think he took the project somewhere else to begin with. I might be wrong, but I don't think he took it anywhere else. And I'm glad he didn't, to be honest. But I was just blown away by it, to be honest. And and the passion that he put into it was incredible.
Can you talk to me a little bit about a couple of the projects that you're currently working on and how your job works within this model of publishing?
So I'm working on quite a few anthologies at the moment, because I love them. I love to read them, and I love to hear from underrepresented voices. And so I'm doing an anthology called Pride Not Prejudice, which is a collection of essays by trans and non-binary people in the UK, and that's going to be edited by Helen Belcher. And when did we launch that? We launched that in the spring, and that was the first book that I brought to Unbound, and I was an intern when I brought that project along, so I was thrilled when, even though I was very low down in the company, I was thrilled that I was allowed to go ahead with that project. And it's something that I'm very, very passionate about. And I don't think a trans anthology like that has been done before. And what's great about that is that we now have, it's not the token anthology, because sometimes that tends to happen. Once something like The Good Immigrant comes out, people are like, oh, okay, you don't need any more anthologies about, minority voices, that's the one. But I think when we introduce, a lot more, it kind of proves that the space for more. We're not that publisher that will just have success with one and think, okay, great, job's done, whatever. And so we're doing that, which is great. I'm doing an anthology called Cut from the Same Cloth, and that is an anthology about British hijabis, so just hijabi wearing Muslim women as well. And I'm also doing an anthology about millennials as well, which is called No Filter.
Okay.
And so, I'm mainly on the anthologies at the moment.
And you also understand sort of looking after a book called How to Come Alive Again by Beth McCall.
Beth McCall,
sorry.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about that and the importance of her book and the way she looks at mental health issues?
Sure. So Beth McCall is amazing. She's wonderful. So she is a writer. She writes for many different magazines, and she's quite big on Twitter. We came up with she'd actually written a lot of it beforehand, and it was only really by chance that I emailed her thinking, I approached her saying, would you like, have you ever thought about writing a book? I do that quite a lot in my job. I do kind of cold call people sometimes and be like, oh, have you ever thought about writing a book? I like your writing style, blah, 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 blah. And then through a series of meetings, we kind of, she was very, very passionate about talking about mental health, not just her journey, but how to come alive again, to the name of her book, after going through some mental health episodes and how to actually, come out of it. And I just thought it was really important, to be honest. We have had loads of mental health books over the past few years, but this one's so different because the way she writes, it's like she's your best friend. And it's not patronising, it's not, right, you need to do this, this and this in order to be happy again. It's not academic-y either, but it's just... It's lovely. Even we have an excerpt of it on. We have a little excerpt on the funding page, and I think that's mainly how people were just like, oh, I need to help to create this book, because the way she writes is just so unique. And even the video that we produced for it, I have a little starring role in it right at the end. I think her personality came across really well, and it funded within just a few months or something, and now it's now at like 120% or something.
I sort of wanted to ask about that because obviously she's incredibly charismatic. I've watched the video, and you immediately want to respond to her and want to fund the book. Presumably for some other writers who are more introverted, producing these videos and putting themselves out there is a lot harder than they would struggle, and it's not their it's not what they would want to do naturally.
Definitely, yeah.
So how do you help authors to produce these videos, which are, after all, the means to getting their book published with Unbound?
So commissioning editors are quite involved in the video process. Obviously, it's not for everyone. Not everyone can, be like, "Hi, my book is amazing. I'd love for you to fund it," straight to the camera. So there are different avenues you can take. We do advise that you do some kind of video, whether it's a voiceover, or whether you get an actor to maybe do a voice for you, or even an animation. We've even had some like stop motion videos and stuff like that. We just find something that suits the author and just tailor make it to fit the person's personality, but also get the points across, which is this book can only exist with your help. This is the book I'm creating. This is why. And you'll see in all our videos that they're all so different, and it is because all our authors are different, and we take the time out. We take the time just to make sure that our authors are just really comfortable with the stuff that they're putting out there, and. We film the video, and then it goes to our videographer to edit and everything. But the author is involved every step of the way, even writing their scripts. It's their own script. Sometimes I nip and tweak it and nip and tuck it a little bit. But it's completely the author's words, what they want to put out there, and they have the final say over whether they like the video or not, or whether they want things chopped and changed. And so it's the author's own basically, but we tailor make it. To make sure it fits every kind of author that we have, which is a very eclectic mix.
Sorry, I'm going to try and get you to really go into the weeds here, but
sure.
How does it work from an author's perspective? So say they have a book and they have an agent. If it's a novel, they've already written it, they've got an agent. Would the agent bring it to you as one of the possible options?
Yeah.
Or do you generally approach writers?
It's a mixture of both, actually. We're one of those publishers where we do accept unsolicited manuscripts as well. So if you go on our website, you can just submit your manuscript to us, or you can even submit a few chapters, or you can even submit the idea, basically, that you have. But there is a level of scouting as well, where commissioning editors, if we know of a writer that we want to approach, we just approach either via an agent, or if they don't have an agent, not an agent. There are so many avenues, basically. And I think it's really good that way. We can always get really, really good projects by opening it out and being a bit more broad in our search. So for an author, whether you have an agent or not, you can, if you are agentless, usually you can go through the submissions page on our website, and then you'll hear back from us within a few weeks, so 4 to 8 weeks, the standard. If you do have an agent, sometimes the agent does bring things over, and they choose a specific editor to go to. We sit down, have discussions, usually with the author, hopefully like there, and we talk about whether Unbound is the place for the author, because sometimes voice is going, sorry, because sometimes we do make it very clear that our publishing model isn't for everyone, basically. And so we just need to make sure that they know that from the get-go, because it is a very, it is quite time-consuming trying to do crowdfunding campaigns, even if it's like on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or whatever, it is time-consuming. So we just need to make sure that the author knows what they're getting into, basically. And then after that, so once we've all gone away, we've decided that we'd like to take the book on board. The commissioning editor goes away and they cost the project, and what that means is that we come up with the exact amount of money you need to raise the book. And so we have a costing model on the back end of the site, and I'll put in the word count, the binding we're going to do, so paperback or hardback, whether it has images or not. We even put the cost of hiring the videographer. If the author is having a launch party, we even put in the costs for that. If it's an anthology, the cost of all the fees of all the contributors, all the editorial fees, structural edits, copy edits, everything is in there. And then we come up with, that's approved by our editorial team. And then we come up with a specific target that we have to raise. Then that goes back to the agent with a breakdown of the costing. That goes back to the author as well. We have a few more meetings about that. And if they're happy with that, send over a contract. And then we discuss the video and what to do for the video. And then after that, we just work out the copy for the website, come up with some pledge levels. They can be the standard ones, or you can add some quirky ones in there, like dinner, or something like that, which is great. And then we just pick a launch date, and we put it on the site, and it's out there.
And it goes live.
It goes live, yeah.
So I'm wondering how this works in terms of advance. Do you offer authors advances, or is it just a completely different system? They don't get an advance and they essentially have a fundraising target.
Yeah, so we're in talks of perhaps changing things up a little bit, but we usually don't offer advances, but we do a 50-50 net profit split with ourselves and the author. And some authors are a bit like, what? Because they're so used to the traditional publishing model where they get an advance at the start and then get a bit more like after publication, that kind of thing. But we don't offer advances right now. And it's worked out okay, to be honest. But it does depend really on how the crowdfunding goes, because everything over 100%, that is after all the overheads are covered, in the target, everything over 100 is the 50-50 net profit split. So it really does depend on like how much they raise overall. So it's really hard to kind of put a specific number on how much they get. We can't really forecast that much, to be honest. It is quite unpredictable. But as you can see on our site, some of our books have gone to like 340%, or things like that. Some do incredibly well, some are a bit more modest. But it usually works out perfectly fine.
And when do you call time on a project? Say you've chosen to work with an author on a book. They've put their video and their pitch out there, and they've got some subscribers, but they haven't hit their target. What happens then?
Yeah, that is quite rare. It's quite rare that we take a book down, to be honest. There isn't actually like a time limit like there is on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. So books can be on there for a few years, but it's really when an author comes to us being like, I've really put my heart and soul into this, I don't think I can do it. Or maybe their book idea changes and they don't think the book that they were going to write, they don't think they can do it anymore. That usually is the case a bit more.
Yeah.
And so we call them or bring them in, sit down with them to make sure that they're 100% sure. And in that case, we do send out an email to everyone that's pledged so far, offering them their money back. And then we start the process of removing it from the site, and obviously everyone gets the money back, and then that's that. It is quite rare, but that does happen. It does definitely happen.
So what's the longest a book has been sort of out there and unfinished, as it were?
I'm not too sure, actually. I think I'm not too sure. I know there's been some that have definitely been over a year. I think a few over 2 years, but I'm not sure that some have been on for like 6 years or something like that. I look at the site every day and I haven't seen any like that so far.
And what do you offer in terms, I mean, obviously book publishing, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes. There's marketing, there's sales, there's all the data, the distribution. How does Unbound sort of cope, especially now that we've got a landscape of very big conglomerate publishers? How does that operate?
We have an inbound we have an in-house team that do all of that. We've got a PR team, Amy and Charlotte, who are great. They do our main list PR, basically. We have a sales guy, Julian, who's wonderful. We have a data scientist, Noelia, as well. So we actually have an in-house team that deal with all of that, just like a professional publisher. Not professional, we are a professional publisher. Just like a traditional publisher, we have all of that. The only thing that separates us really from traditional publishing is the fact that we crowdfund first, and then after the book is, after it hits 100%, that's when it goes to the more traditional way of editing, production, and then the PR once it's actually in your hands as a book. So we have an in-house team, just on this side of the wall. We have different departments. Our tech team is closest to us here, and then we've got the digital team, we've got the PR team, the production team, the sales and marketing team. We're all here in this building. And
how does it work from the agent's point of view? Obviously with traditional publishing they get 15% or whatever it is. How is that the same with Unbound?
It's exactly the same.
So if the author is getting 50% of sales, then presumably that works out fairly well for the agent as well.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same as traditional publishing.
Okay. What else was I going to ask? Oh yeah, what is the has this model changed the relationship between the author and their readership? Because you get a much clearer sense, I imagine, crowdfunding, who your readers are and what they want. Because is there feedback? Does the site allow feedback between subscribers and authors?
So do you mean feedback in the way of once they've read the book, then...
No, I sort of mean while the book's still kind of in the tendering process, while people are still pledging money, is it possible for authors to get an insight into the kind of people who are willing to fund the book? Yeah,
so every author, they have an Unbound account, but they have an Unbound author account. So when they click on their book... on the back end of the site, they can see a graph of the process, of like how well the book is doing, who's pledged for what level, how many people have pledged for certain levels, an estimate of how long it will take to fund the book, even how much money has been raised and how much money then they still need to raise. And they can even see tweets that have generated more pledges coming in. They can see all of that, all of the infographics. And it's very visual, there's graphs, and so they can really see a breakdown of, how well it's doing and how long ideally it will take to fund, that kind of thing.
Right, there's a birthday in the background.
Oh, there's a birthday, I hear, yeah.
So they've got more access to the preliminary data than you might otherwise have in traditional publishing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's good for the author to see that it is pretty transparent. They know, once they log into the site, they know how well the campaign is going, even if it's stalled a little bit. They still know roughly how much or how long it'll probably take to get it to 100%. They can see all of that on the site, which I think our feedback from them is that it's really, really helpful. And there is a bit on the site where, it says Q&A on the tabs at the bottom of each book page, and potential readers or potential pledgers, or if they've pledged already, they can ask questions about the project, and then either an editor or the author themselves can interact with them, which I think is a really, really important tool on our site. Basically, it kind of bridges the gap and cuts out the middleman.
How much sort of repeat business do you get from one particular author? Do they tend to come back to Unbound and have a relationship with a particular editor as they might do in another publisher? Or is there more kind of churn because of this model?
Yeah, a lot of authors do come back, which is great. We've had Robert Llewellyn, who plays Crichton in Red Dwarf. He's done a number of books with us, which is great. And then some other authors, they come back. They love the model. They know what we're about, and I think they love, the kind of crowdfunding process. And we have a lot of return authors, which is really great. We build those relationships. We do have some that for their second novel or another novel, they might go elsewhere because some books work out better on our site than others, basically. So if they change direction, if they want to explore a new genre, sometimes they decide that it probably won't work in a crowdfunding sense, or if they want it out a bit quicker and they want more of a structure of when it's going to be published, because obviously crowdfunding is quite unpredictable. You don't know how long it will take to fund. Sometimes they do choose to go elsewhere, which is totally fine. But it's so great to have return authors and coming back with their second book and things like that, and it excites all the people who pledged for them before. But the second one's coming out. Oh, brilliant! I'll pledge for this. I'll get my name in the back of the book for this one. And they really build really loyal fan bases and a community basically around the author, and it's really lovely to see, and it's lovely to be part of that.
How important is social media in all of this? Because presumably, again, it's about getting the word out and building a brand. Yeah. And again, some people are more comfortable and are just better at social media and sort of promoting themselves and their projects than other people. How does that work, and how does that factor into what you do?
So social media is important, and when I came here, I thought that it was the thing that drives people to pledge for the books the most. But over the year that I've been here, I've realised that isn't actually the case. A lot of people pledge for Unbound books for the author, to be honest. They love the author's work, and so they're mainly doing it more for the author and not because they're like a big celebrity or whatever. And so we have noticed that even if you have like a couple thousand followers on Twitter, it doesn't mean that your books can get funded quicker than someone who has 12 followers, basically.
But how are people hearing about the project?
You can kind of do it in different ways. We do like the author to go into their personal networks, even if it's family, friends, whatever, and just make sure that they know about it first, so that, you know, in a circle, they know about it first, and then move out that way. And then if they do have social media, Twitter or Facebook, whatever, then they can, you know, promote it on there with a link and stuff like that. But we have found that direct emails really help. Even putting a link to your book saying, oh, please support my book, crowdfunding on Unbound, in your email signature, even that helps, to be honest. Direct communication via your email network, or if you've got a newsletter or something, that can generate more than just sending out 20 tweets a day about it, to be honest, because that can get really annoying and spammy, to be honest, and it can also get lost in
the noise,
basically,
although I guess it helps if J.K. Rowling.
That definitely helps. If you can get someone with a following on board with it, or to tweet it, I'm sure, definitely that helps, but that's not the be all and end all.
You've mentioned a couple of times that there are certain kinds of books that tend to do well with the Unbound model. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of books that do tend to do well and the type of books that don't?
So from my point of view, the books that tend to do well have a kind of campaign element behind it. So we've recently done an anthology about the Repeal the Eighth, which is about repealing the Eighth Amendment of the Irish Constitution, and obviously that is a big thing at the moment. There might be a referendum about that kind of thing. So that's what I mean by that. So when it comes to our non-fiction, that kind of has to have some kind of campaigny element behind it. But even if it's fiction, we do have one called a book called The Story Distorted. That also has a kind of campaigning element behind it as well, even though it's fiction. Books that tend not to do well, I'm not too sure actually, because even our most niche projects, they always find a way to work. There's always an audience for something.
I mean, presumably it's very different for fiction and non-fiction, and there must be an appeal to the system more for fiction writers, I imagine, because if you have written a novel, you already have the words. So you can come to Unbound and you're immediately taking it to an audience, even if you're not actually letting the audience read it yet. You're already taking it to an audience. But I imagine the lack of advance is harmful to non-fiction writers who might spend 3 years researching a project. Is that why your model might be changing in terms of advances?
I wouldn't say not having an advance is harmful, because it's very clear on our site. Our main list books, most of them are non-fiction, and some of them have done exceptionally well. Without advances, because there is the 50-50 profit share, which a lot of the time works out a lot better than just having quite a small advance.
I mean, what I'm saying is in the long run that works out better, but while you're writing...
it could be like, okay, I don't actually, have an advance. So when it comes to the difference between fiction and non-fiction books, there are 2 avenues to go down with Unbound. So when I keep talking about the main list, I talk about the books that have the higher targets, basically in the kind of in the mid thousands, and those are the ones that are turned into hardback books. And then we have the original paperback and the digital list, which is a very, very exciting thing, and that's where a lot of our debut fiction goes. And they have smaller targets of around about £4,000. And it's a lot easier for first-time writers and a lot of fiction writers to raise, that much money. And their book gets turned into a paperback, and it still gets the same treatment with, the cover design and everything like that. And that's where a lot of our fiction goes. But it really does depend, basically. But not having an advance, a lot of authors are a bit, shocked at first, that kind of thing. But we are a small publishing house, and it's just not something that we're offering right now. But we have realised over the 6 years of the 50-50 profit split has worked. And we have the evidence, we've had best-selling books and, with that model.
Something that's come up again and again in conversations with authors and also with some publishers as well is that authors are told that there just simply isn't a readership for a certain type of book, and that can be very frustrating if you're convinced that there is a readership but they're just not being spoken to. Do people come to Unbound feeling that this is a way to prove that there is that readership out there? And can you talk a little bit more about Unbound in terms of diversity and the help that can give writers who are stonewalled by traditional publishers?
Sure. Yeah, we do get a lot of authors who have come from traditional publishing. They've taken it, maybe they've got an agent and they've gone to a publisher and the publisher's gone back being like, oh no, I don't think, that. And so they do come to us and there's, I believe there is a readership for this, blah, blah, blah. And we do it the same way. We don't just take projects on just for the sake of it and just as a risk, like, oh yeah, there might be a readership, blah, blah. We do genuinely look at, the proposal, what is, what they're planning to do, if they've written stuff, what they're looking at. And then along with them, we do make the decision whether to go on board with it or not. It's an interesting one. It has happened where they've kind of proved traditional publishers wrong. It does happen quite a lot actually, and it's always really lovely to see when we actually have a book in our hands that wouldn't have existed otherwise with the traditional publisher, and it's really, really nice. So that does happen. In terms of diversity, there is a problem in publishing in general. I even remember Candice, when you interviewed her, talking about it. There's a problem. There aren't enough black people. There aren't enough working class people. Things are changing slowly, but the way I see it is that it's interesting because there are black and Asian people quite low down in the company, but there are very, very, very few women in the decision making roles. And I think that is what needs to change, really. It's a tough one. I feel like I haven't been in this industry that long, but genuinely in publishing, there definitely is a problem. At Unbound, it's interesting. We've had a lot of new staff over the past couple of months, and I'm just very glad that I'm not the only black editor. We do have another one, which is great. We have some more people of colour, like as the head of content, in the finance team, in the data team, that kind of thing. So, and also different classes, more working class people, and like LGBT people. And so I think Unbound is, I wouldn't say we're leading the way in diversity, but we do. I'm just happy that they've acknowledged that they have a problem. Like they had a problem within their company, like Unbound, and they've actually done things about it. And I was just happy because I came through to Unbound as an intern, and it's because Unbound decided that they wanted an intern from a black, Asian or mixed ethnicity thing. They actually took the initiative to actually get in touch with Creative Access and was like, oh yeah, please find us some interns and stuff. And so that was the first step. I think that was a good step, definitely, and I wouldn't be here without Creative Access.
So from the kind of the macro level back down to you personally, what is it that you spend your day doing? What gets you excited about publishing, and is it what you expected it to be?
What gets me excited? I actually love working here. I can't even lie. It's so wonderful, and it's mainly because I get the freedom, basically, even though I'm still so new to this industry. I get the creative freedom to work on books and projects that I really love and believe in, and I believe should exist, basically. A normal working day involves a lot of emails, a lot of reading of manuscripts, especially from the submissions. We get a lot through, and so we read some of them. I have meetings with authors, meetings with agents, that kind of thing. I also have a list of people that I'm thinking of approaching about book ideas as well. And it also involves me putting copy on the website, building authors' pages, basically, all on the back end. So it also includes coding. And because I've got a little bit of experience in blogging, where I used to code my own stuff, I can kind of use that to help with this job. But I know it sounds really cliche, but every day is different here as well. And it's a lovely place to work. Every day is different, and it's just so great, basically.
So how do you go about choosing the projects that you will that you decide to sort of take forward? Are you more inclined to go for a project that you sort of know the author, or you've seen their work and you've approached them, or do you find a lot coming through for submissions that actually really grabs you?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. We get incredible manuscripts and ideas through submissions. I think there is this thing in the industry, in publishing, where there's like a slush pile of with unsolicited with authors with unsolicited manuscripts, and it's always like a chore to read them and that kind of thing. But it's one of the joys of being an editor, of people submitting to Unbound and it coming through to my email, and I just look at their proposal, their like kind of mini proposal that they fill out on the website, and just read through it, and I kind of highlight the ones that I would personally like to work on, and then I just have a chat with Matthew, head of publishing, and I kind of say why I like it, and whether it could work with Unbound, and we have that kind of discussion first.
Do you have to pitch it to the whole rest of the team before you go ahead with it, or is it
not
just
at all.
A one-on-one conversation?
Yeah, one-on-one. Yeah, not at all. But sometimes, not that we fight over projects, but sometimes more than one editor wants a project, and a lot of the time it's like a collaborative thing with two editors, and that's usually a really good sign, to be honest, because it proves that the idea or the manuscript is really, really great. That happens quite a lot, actually, and I find that quite exciting, actually. But yeah. I just love reading the proposals because they're so different. We can have like an idea for a cookbook one day, an idea for like a murder mystery or a thriller the next, or like a memoir or a photography book or something. It's just so different every single day, and we just get loads and loads coming through. Obviously, it's the same as every publisher that does unsolicited manuscripts, that some aren't so great, but there's always just the gems in there, and so I do spend a lot of time here just going through and just reading, just to try and find those real gems that I have to work on, that I won't let anyone else have. Like, I have to work on. Yeah.
I think that's a really positive note to end on. All our listeners will no doubt be trying to pitch those gems to you.
Why not?
Thank you so much for giving me your time and talking to me so honestly about Unbound.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hello, it's us again with a swift update from our lives. Kassia, what have you been up to?
I have been continuing to work on the next chapter of my book, which has been made slightly tricky by moving house, which is always fun.
Or moving back into your house.
Moving back into my house, which is now beautiful and lovely, and I'm sure I'm going to get lots of great work done here. And it's also very colourful.
It is very colourful. We're back in Cassia's shed after a long absence. It's now accessorised with a lemon tree.
Yeah.
And a moderately obedient dog.
We should quite sleepy.
We're doing this in slight short order because I have to travel this evening to Africa for a story, which I'm looking forward to, and I've also been cracking on with my book. Cassie's told me I'm too downbeat about that, so here's some forced enthusiasm. Anyway, this has been Always Take Notes, hosted as ever by me, Simon Acombe.
And me, Kassia St. Clair. Our producers are Olivia Crellin, Ed Kiernan and Liz Davies.
Our music is by Jess Danheiser. Our social media is handled by Zara Hankier, and James Edgar does our graphic design.
Of course, we're on all manner of social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Just search Always Take Notes. And we're also on Twitter at Take Notes Always. And our website is alwaystakenotes.com.
And if you've enjoyed the show, please do leave a review on iTunes. It really helps.
Thank you very much.